You know, what's happening this past week has been something else. It's, you know, the Barneys Stop and Shop and Frisk. What do you all think about that? You have these two people that came into Barneys, two young black people that came into Barneys. One's a young man, one's a young woman. The young man bought a $350 belt. After he purchased the belt, he was stopped by the NYPD and asked, where did you get the money from? You know, you can't afford this. Later on, he was handcuffed and sent to the precinct station and later released. Also, we had another lady who bought a $2,500 belt from Barneys. She was stopped at the subway, and she said they were very rough with her, and they later let her go. What did you think about that when you first heard about that?
Well, when I first heard about it, you know, it wasn't particularly surprising, just giving, you know, who we are and where we live, you know, in this country, and that retail outlets and other institutions in our society are prejudiced against black people. And the assumption is that black people don't have wealth and cannot afford to make luxury purchase items. So, you know, that presumption prevails is not shocking, but it's disappointing, you know, still at the same time. And that's just putting it mildly to say that it's disappointing.
Yeah, these two youngsters, they were pretty much, one was the young man, he was a student, still is a student, an engineering student. And both of them from Brooklyn. The lady is a nursing student also. Right. And they both pretty much saved their money to go to Barneys to purchase these items and so forth. And for them to, Barneys and NYPD, for them to just come and accost them and ask them very rudely, where'd you get the money from? You can't afford that. What do you think about that, just being able to afford that? I mean, they worked hard for it. It was legal. What do you think? And callers, please, viewers, please call in 212-757-1393, 212-757-1393. I would love to hear your point of view about the shop and frisk.
Well, I believe the system, as we all know, is corrupt with racism and also fear. So that when a person of color appears in a store buying what that particular mindset believes to be not the norm, then the reaction would be what it was. And the other concern is the consumption of products for status symbols. So it's a two-edged sword. And I looked at it two different ways when it happened, but it's a violation of civil rights.
You said you looked at it different ways. What was the other way?
The other way was to see from the point of view of, could the money have been used differently? Although people do have a right to spend their money the way they wish.
Right.
But, you know, I weighed both sides.
Well,
and it didn't make it right that they were stopped, but it was just something to look at, given our place in society and where we need to go and where we need to focus.
So what do you have to say?
Well, that's what I was really thinking. It was a double tragedy because the police nor the store had any right to make an assumption like that, and they turned out to be very wrong.
Right, yes.
And the other thing, just as Carolyn had said, there were so many other things for which they could have used that money. And you know, they have a right to get what they want. They certainly have a right to like high-end items. But you know, unless their ducks are all in a row and you know they have this kind of disposable income, I just thought it was very sad that they placed such an importance on these items that it took that priority in their lives. But yet this is how they were treated when they went and spent their hard-earned money.
Please call in 212-757-1393. I would love to hear what you all have to say about the incident at Barneys. What about Jay-Z? He has started a clothing line there, and there's been a backlash on him saying that he should have spoken out. But I just want to read the statement that he says. He says, I move and speak based on facts, not emotions. I haven't made any comments because I'm waiting on facts and the outcome of a meeting between community leaders and Barneys. Why am I being demonized, denounced, and thrown on the cover of a newspaper for not speaking immediately? What do you?
I wanted to, I respect the content of the conversation that talks about or brings into question how someone spends their money. But I do think, I have to say respectfully, I think it's a little bit of a slippery slope there, because when we enter that into the conversation, although you've made it clear that they have a right to spend the money on however they want, I wonder if when we enter that into the conversation, do we take too much attention away from the fact that their civil rights were violated, that this is about race and discrimination, and focus on the victim and what their choices were as opposed to what happened to them. So I think that when we live in a society that is repeatedly and constantly and deliberately on a regular basis in all aspects of society are treating black people, black men in particular, youth and general people of color in a way that says that you don't have a right to move in such a way legally,
Legally,
in society, or even if it is just a retail outlet, when we don't focus on that diligently, and in a variety of ways, including protests and boycotts and so forth, then we're not pushing back enough.
Okay. Caller, you have something to say? What do you have to say? What's your name and where you calling from?
Hi, Deidre, it's Raj. How you doing?
Hey, Raj, how are you?
All right, I'm calling from Harlem.
Okay, Harlem. So what's happening? What's your viewpoint?
Well, my viewpoint is I agree with with everybody, especially the last two ladies that spoke about the racism that goes on in these high-end stores. But at the same time, too, while we don't have the right to tell people how to spend their money.
Yes.
We are living in a materialistic society where name-brand products seem to give people either what we call street cred or status. As far as the young lady's concerned, who has a child and one on the way, $2,500 on a bag is really too much.
That says a lot, yeah.
That's too much.
Yeah.
$2,500 is 3 months rent for me, okay?
I
think her money could be spent differently.
Okay.
As far as Jay-Z is concerned, I was watching one of the programs on the Manhattan Neighborhood Network the other day.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the shout out.
And Mr. Weatherspoon made a point very clear about Jay-Z. If you want to contribute to your foundation, all he has to do is write a check. We don't need to be going into stores to buy vests for $700 and double-fisted, two-finger rings. That's just ridiculous.
Okay, thank you, Raj. We have to go on. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Deidre.
Okay, that was the bag that was up there. It was an orange bag, and that bag cost $2,500. Well, we don't really know what JC does with his money. We really don't know what he's giving back to the community and what have you. But on the other hand, I'm quite sure he has been profiled before he blew up. And of course, he had the money to buy certain things because of his illegal activities. I would think that he would have said something about it. I know he's looking at the outcome, but for me, these kids were innocent.
Well, he did later come back, and at least I read a statement where he said that, and it sounds like it was after the statement that you just read, that he is certainly familiar with being profiled. He's sensitive to that. But he wanted to wait further, and then he posed the question, if there's a rush to judgment on my part, am I not being, wouldn't I be guilty of doing what the other folks are doing who prejudge us? So it really does bring into the larger issue of what we believe our artists whether or not we believe our artists have a responsibility to the community. And I had some conflict around that just generally, but I always land on the fact, or at least the belief, that our artists ultimately have a responsibility to the people, artists and entertainers, because there's a difference
Yes.
between the two, that they do have a responsibility to their consumers, to their constituents or whatever. And this whole notion that artists want to come to the forefront and say, but I'm not a role model, don't put me in that. I think it's an avoidance that we can't afford. Now, to what degree an artist or a celebrity or entertainer, gets involved and starts foundations and does some kind of activism with the wealth that they have amassed, I follow more closely along the lines of what Harry Belafonte would have us to believe. But it requires a conversation, and I believe some private behind the scenes conversation before people run to the media.
There is a lawsuit.
Yes, I appreciate that response, because they could very well have returned the items at that point.
But didn't they? I
making
thought they
it
did. I thought they did return. No, okay.
I don't.
Go ahead.
I don't know. Did they?
I thought I read the guy, he returned the item.
Okay.
But I don't know about the woman.
young lady.
Yes.
Now, where Jay-Z is concerned, I feel that he has as much right to earn his money as a consumer has to buy an overpriced item. Because he's building a legacy for him and his family.
Yes.
And in my mind, he may not say it outright, but he may be saying, I have 99 problems and your opinion isn't one.
Woo! Go ahead.
I can understand both sides of it. I think the point that I was making is that it's very sad that these two individuals held these items in such esteem in a place in their lives.
Yeah.
Absolutely, they have a right to buy what they want, and absolutely the police had no right to do what they did, and the store had no right to make the assumptions that they made. But at the end of the day, I'm thinking society has placed such an importance in our culture on these items that somehow we need them to validate who it is that we are as individuals.
Over family, yeah.
Over,
Because this woman is pregnant and has a child.
and that was, I understand, her income tax refund, which would lead me to believe that she may not be in a position to have that much disposable income.
Cash, that's right.
But
And maybe she just wanted to treat herself. to
and
something.
that's wonderful. That's wonderful, absolutely.
Okay.
But on
All right.
something that just seemed to be very much out of her means. But again, as April was saying, that is not my main point. My main point is, I think it's sad that they give that so much power to something that sees them as worthless.
Well, here's my take on it. The business community know that black people are pretty much the biggest consumers, if not in America, probably the world. Now, if you're going to walk into the store, I would think, ching, ching, here's some dollars. I will be showing you this and that. You're not walking
Excellent
into
customer
the store.
service.
Excellent customer service. So I think it's kind of hard to really understand why these people, they had their debit card, they had their ID, and they were still held. Even the guy, he showed his receipt, his debit card, everything. He still was rushed off to the precinct. So that's the thinking, that the racism that's instilled in this country.
The other thing, too, I think, I do believe that people in entertainment, myself being one, that we do have a responsibility on the type of image that is put out there, because we have the ability to speak to a lot of people. And as far as Jay-Z goes, he made a statement without making a statement. He said something to let people know that he was aware. He did not go on one side or the other, but I can also understand from where he comes, because this is a huge business decision. And this could impact on some people getting work. This could impact on some people. I mean, there are a lot of other things, I think, a lot of other circumstances that needed to be considered, rather than just pressuring him to say, you know what, you got to cut it off now. That's it. So, you know, I can't rush to judgment as far as he goes. Now, there were, you know, some things I remember when he first started that I thought, oh, this, you know, he can speak to millions of people at one time. Why doesn't he say something? But I think in this particular case, I can't quite rush to judgment to say, you know, he should have cut that deal immediately, because I don't know the stakes of it.
You're absolutely right.